This AutoCAD tutorial video is for a complete beginner of AutoCAD, or if you are starting to learn AutoCAD after a long break, then also this video is for you. Now this video is made with AutoCAD 2025 on Windows operating system, but you can follow along this video very easily on any older or even latest version of AutoCAD. So as long as you are using AutoCAD 2013 or later version, you're totally fine to go with it. Also, if you are using Mac, then the user interface will be slightly different, but that doesn't mean AutoCAD won't work exactly the way it is working here. In fact, in Mac also, the commands and tools, they are almost similar. The only difference is the user interface and the commands might be somewhere else. So that you have to be mindful of. Other than that, it's completely similar. Also, if you are watching this video and you're following along using AutoCAD LT, then this video is exactly same. AutoCAD as well as AutoCAD LT are exactly similar as long as you are not using the advanced tools like SheetSet or maybe 3D, which we are of course not discussing in this video. Now in this video, I'm also sharing with you a completely free PDF ebook that has a collection of almost 100 2D and 3D practice drawings that you should try after you are done with this tutorial series. These practice drawings will help you get the required hands-on experience with the software. So watch the video completely to learn where you can download that ebook completely for free. With that being said, here are the topics that we'll cover in this video. We'll start with user interface of AutoCAD, and then we'll talk about making basic lines, then navigation tools, selection set, and understanding units. After that, we'll move to draw commands like line, polyline, circle, arc, and rectangle, and then we'll also cover status bar toggles like ortho mode, polar tracking, and dynamic input. In the next part of the video, we'll talk about modify tools like move, copy, rotate, mirror, join, explode, fillet, trim, extend, and offset commands. In the final section of the video, we'll talk about object snaps, object properties like line type and transparency, and then about adding dimensions. We'll also talk about using layers, making and modifying blocks, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with printing and plotting tools. I've used some ready-made lesson files for this tutorial series, and you can download all the lesson files using link in the description of this video. So with that, let's get started. Alright, so I'm using AutoCAD 2025 for this tutorial, but you can use older versions of AutoCAD as well. In fact, any version after 2016 up to the latest version is just fine for this tutorial. If you are using even older versions, older than 2016, then also most of the lessons will be exactly the same, but there might be a few differences in the user interface that you should be very mindful of. Now, with that being said, let's just go to the user interface. So when you start it for the very first time, this is the screen that you'll get. So this start tab. Now usually we don't have this drawing, so I'll close it. Now on the left we have open and new option. With open you can open a new drawing, and with new you can open a new template. The default template will show up in the tooltip right here. As you can see, it's acad.dwt, but you can change to some other template by clicking this drop down and selecting the browse template option. Now these are all the templates, and templates are basically settings like unit, precision, and things like that that are ready-made and stored, so you can use it. You can also make your own template that I'll show you in a moment, but for now I'll simply select acad.dwt as the default template and click on open, and that's going to open a new drawing in a new tab. Now let's go to this start tab again, and let's look at other options. So here we have the recent drawing. So any drawing that you opened recently will show up here. You can click to open it again. You can change the view using this option. So that's how it's going to look in the list view, and this is thumbnail view. Then we have some other options here that you can explore. Now after that, I'll go to this drawing 9 tab, which we just now opened, and now let's look at the ribbon area. Now ribbon area is this area here, and it has all the commands. It is also very logically divided into different tabs. So we have home tab, insert tab, annotate. So basically home tab has collection of all the important commands. Insert has everything related to inserting external components in AutoCAD. Annotate is all about adding annotations like text, dimensions, multi-leaders, and things like that, and so on. Then we have here quick access toolbar. Now this toolbar has frequently used tools, and these tools are also available in the application menu, which is this one, this AutoCAD logo. If you click, it's going to show this logo and these icons, and these options are also available here. Now if you want to add or remove options from here, you can go to this drop down right here, And from here you can check or uncheck the options that you want to add or remove. If you want to search for a command, that's right here. For example, let's say we want to search for line, just type line, press enter. Like Google search, it's going to give you several results. You can select the one which feels relevant and you can read about that command. Now, on the right side right here, we have this navigation options and this one is view cube. Now view cube is useful in 3D drawing, so we are not going to look at it here, but the only thing that we might need here is the compass, and the compass is showing the direction. So this is east, west, north and south. You can rotate your view by 90 degrees simply by clicking here and 90 degree here. Then we have here command line, command bar, command palette, whatever you want to call it. And this command palette may look slightly different in your case. If it looks kind of like this, a single bar, that's totally fine. At the end of the day, it should be docked right here like this. So I'll just make sure that it is docked like this. Now if the command line is not visible, for example, I'll just hide it. Then you can press and hold Control key and then 9 to bring it back. Then we have the status bar options that we'll also explore in a moment. All right, so with that said, let's now look at the main thing, which is drawing area. This is the drawing area and everything that we make in AutoCAD will show up right here. Now, before we move forward, I'd like to share with you a completely free AutoCAD 2D and 3D practice drawing ebook. This ebook was once available on Amazon for a price tag of nearly 50 USD, but I made it completely free for you. You can get this ebook using the link in the description of the video or also from the pinned comment. So download the ebook and then move back to the video. Now, before I move further, I want you to make similar settings in your drawings so that we can be on the same page when following along the tutorial. So the first thing is here on the status bar, make sure that this grid option is on, but this snap option, which is right next to the grid mode, is off. It should be unchecked like this. If it is on, it's going to show it up like this blue highlighted icon. Then we have this dynamic input mode, which is off in my case. If you don't have it, if it doesn't show up here on the status bar, then go to this 3 dash line and select dynamic input. This should be checked. When checked, it's going to show up here. When it shows up, just hide it. If selected, it's going to show like blue, but we don't want it, so I'll just uncheck it. Then here we have ortho and polar mode. I'll select polar tracking, and then here we have object snap tracking and object snap. Both of these should be on. Also in object snap, click this arrow and make sure that these options are checked. So endpoint, midpoint, center and intersection. You can uncheck extension. We don't need it for now. So only these 4 points should be checked. All right. And with that, we are on the same page. Now let's start with our first drawing, and that I'll do using line command. So you can start a command simply by clicking here in the ribbon area. All these are commands, or you can use its command alias. So all the commands have, almost all the commands have command aliases. For example, line command has command alias L. So you can click here and the line command will start. It's going to show up here. Here we have the icon, the name of the command and the description, or you can just type L, press enter, and that's going to start the line command. When a command is active, it will show it here on the command line. But if you want to get rid of that command, simply press escape key. You can press escape several times, it doesn't matter. Now let's start line again, and I'll make the very first line simply by clicking at a point. So click at a point and the line will start. This is called rubber banding line because it kind of looks like a rubber band that starts from a point. Now click at the second point, then third point, fourth, and now I'll click back again at the starting point, and we have finished this quadrant. Now in this case, the command is still active and I want to deactivate it. So you can press escape key to deactivate the command. So we have our very first drawing here. Now there are a few things that I want to highlight here. Whenever typing the command alias, for example, for line we need L as the alias, you don't need to click your cursor here on the command line. You can simply start typing directly. Like if I type L, it will always type it here on the command line. So you don't have to navigate it to this point here. And the second thing is command history. If you want to see which command you have already used, that's going to show up here, and you can expand this history to see more of it. So this is quite handy if you want to check what commands you have used. So I'll just move it back to maybe just 2 lines. Now let's talk about navigation tools. So in AutoCAD, if you want to navigate your drawing, then you can use a 3-button mouse. In fact, 3-button mouse is highly recommended if you are using laptop with left click, right click, and just a touchpad. Well, you can use that as well, but for a faster and efficient workflow, I'd recommend a mouse with middle wheel click as well. So let me show you how that helps. So if you want to select an object, simply move your cursor to that object and click, and that's going to select your object. And with click, I mean left click. So you can keep on clicking on multiple objects and that's going to select it. You don't need to press and hold shift or control key to just press and select multiple objects. You can just select it simply by clicking on objects, and it's going to add everything in your selection set. To remove the selection, press escape. Now the next thing is panning your drawing. So if you want to pan your drawing, then press and hold your middle mouse wheel and then move your mouse, and that's going to pan your drawing. So this function is called panning your drawing. Now if you want to zoom in or out, then you can move your cursor to the point which you want to zoom in and then rotate your mouse wheel like this. In one direction it will zoom in another one it will zoom out. The point where you put your cursor will be the point of zoom in and out. That will be the focus point. Now if you don't have 3-button mouse, then you obviously don't have the scroll wheel, and in that case you can use this navigation bar here. If you don't see this navigation bar or this view cube, just go to this view tab and make sure that navigation bar, view cube, both of these are checked. UCS icon is essentially this XY axis. It has a Z axis as well, which will show up in 3D. So just make sure these are checked. Now from here you can go to this option right here and select the different zoom options. For example, you can select zoom in, and that's going to zoom in. You can go to this option, select zoom out, that's going to zoom out. If you want to pan it, you can select this hand icon, then using left click you can pan it. Press escape to get rid of this command. And if you want to fill this drawing in the drawing area, then you can press your middle wheel click twice. So simply double click your middle mouse wheel, and that's going to fill it like this. No matter how small or large your drawing is, even if it's out of your screen, you can double click a middle mouse wheel and that's going to fit it. This fit option is also available here, so you can go to this and select zoom extends. That's going to do the same thing with your drawing. So here it is, zoom extends. Now let's talk about selection sets and how we can make selections in AutoCAD. And for that, I'll go to Home tab first just to get the default behavior here of this software. And now if you want to select objects, of course you can select it one by one by clicking on the objects, or you can select it using a window. So click at a point, let go your cursor, don't click and hold, just let go and then move your mouse, and you're going to get this solid window. This solid window with blue tint is called selection window, and anything inside the selection window will be selected. In this case, this line is completely inside, so only this line will be selected. The lines that are completely outside, like this one, they won't be selected, and then there are two lines that are partially inside and partially outside. They won't be selected either. So anything which is completely inside will be selected. Now if I click at a point and let go my cursor and then move to the left side, I'm getting a crossing window. Now crossing window is something that selects anything which even touches the boundary. So anything which is inside this, like this line, is obviously selected, and then there are these two lines that are partially inside, or essentially they are just touching the boundary, so they are also selected. Let go your cursor and now we have 3 selections. So that's the difference between simple window and crossing window. Now there is a third kind of selection, which is lasso selection. So if you click at a point and don't let go your cursor, now move your mouse, you'll get this freehand kind of selection. So if you click on left, move to the right, you'll get this window selection, and I'll press escape. If I click at a point and I'll hold my cursor and then I'll move to the left, I'll get this crossing selection. Now if you have several objects selected, for example in this case 3 of these are selected, and let's say you want to remove one of them from the selection set, then press and hold shift key and then click on the object which you want to remove, and only that object will be removed from the selection. Alright, so that's enough about navigation tool and selection sets. Let's now move to the most important thing in any drawing, which is units. And for that I'm going to start a completely new tab. So go to this plus icon and that's going to open a new tab, and when you open a new tab it will automatically use the last template which you used. In this case the last template used was acad.dwt, so it's again opening it using the same template. Now to set the units, simply type UN command, press enter, and here is the drawing unit palette. Now the first thing that you need to change here is the length type. It's set to decimal, but if you want your length to display in feet and inches, then you can select architectural format. In this case, I'll keep it at decimal. Now the precision is number of decimal places that will show up in your drawing. This doesn't dictate the actual precision of the drawing because it is always precise. It's always measured in the best possible precision value. This is just for the display. So if I select, let's say, 2 decimal places of precision, then the output on your drawing screen will show only 2 decimal places. But later, if you decided to just increase this precision, the same output will now show 4 decimal places. So it's always measured with the best precision, and it's just a matter of how you want to display it. So in this case, I'll select 2 decimal places. Now this one is for length. Then we have the same thing for angle. You can select different angle types from this list. Decimal degree is the obvious one. And then if you want to be extra precise, you can select degree, minute, second. And once again, we have the precision value. In this case, I'll go to decimal degrees. And once again, we have the precision for angle, which I'll set to just 1 decimal place. Anti-clockwise direction in AutoCAD is positive. But if you want to make clockwise as the positive direction, check this, but I won't recommend that. Let's leave everything to its default state just to avoid any confusion down the line. And here is the most important thing, which is insertion scale. Insertion scale is essentially the unit, and it's also the unit of drawings that will be converted when you insert any external file. So if you change your unit here, it will change your drawing unit, not for this drawing, but also if you insert any external component, it will be converted to whatever unit you set here. Now you can also ignore any unit and you can just select unit less if you want, but I'd recommend that you at least select 1 unit. In this case, I'll maybe select millimeters. And with that, we are done. You can see the sample output here, how your output is going to look like: 2 decimal places for length and then 1 decimal place for angle. Lighting is something for 3D, so we'll ignore that and then click OK. And we are done. So we have set our units. Now, next time if I open a new drawing template, it's going to override these settings and it's going to use whatever settings we have in AutoCAD.dwt template, which is not good. So whatever changes we made here, if you want to save it, then you can do it as a template. And for that, go to Application button, go to Save As, and select Drawing Template. And now it will save the drawing settings like unit, precision, whatever you've set here as a template. Now you can save it in the default template folder, or you can go to Desktop. In my case, I'll go to Desktop and I'll call it Sample Template. All right, and save it. If you want to add a description, you can do it here. So now that the template is saved, if you want to open a new drawing using the same template, just minimize this and double click the template file and it will load the same drawing properties. So even if I close it, and let's say I close this drawing as well, and if I open this one using a new template, it will open a normal drawing. And now if I check the unit, it will preserve the units and the precision and other settings that we have made in the template. And if you open a new tab now, it will use these new template settings, so unit, and it's still Now that we know about templates, let's start with our very first command, which is line command. We have already seen it, but now we'll learn about making precise drawings with line command. So let's go to line, and here I'll start directly from a point. So to start it, just click anywhere in the drawing area and that will be the first point. Now to specify the direction, just move your cursor to the direction where you want to make it and then type the length. In this case, the length is obviously millimeter because we've already set it in the units. So if I type 10, then that will be 10 mm. You don't need to type mm here, just the number, and press enter. And we have this line of length 10 unit. Now let's move it up, and here I'll type 6, enter, that's 6 unit. Now you can move here or in any direction. For example, here I'll just choose a random direction and I'll type 8 and enter. And now I'll join it with this one. And we are done. So we have a precise drawing here. I'll press escape to exit this command, and we have 10, 6, 8 and the remaining length here. Now let's make it again. So I'll go to line, and here I'll move it to this side. I'll click at a point and I'll make the line of length 10 unit and enter. Now what if we want to make this line at a particular angle here? In this case, this angle was quite unknown, but now we want to make it at an exact angle. For that, you just need to type this angle sign. Now this angle sign is right next to M key on your keyboard. So type this sign and now type the angle value and press enter. When you do that, AutoCAD will lock your line to 30-degree angle. Now that 30 was not length. For AutoCAD, it was angle, and you can now enter the length. So let's say the length this time is 6 unit and enter. So there we are, we have got 6 unit in it. The line of length 6 unit is made at an angle of 30 degrees. Now this 30-degree angle is from here to here with respect to this line right here, that is positive x axis. So if the x and y axis were here, then this angle will be made along this x axis from here to here. Now if you want to exit this command, press escape. Now there is one more method of making this same line. So I'll go to line, I'll click at a point, and let's say if we don't want to make this horizontal line first, we directly want to add an angle. Well, you can do that as well. So you can directly type angle sign and do it, or you can go to this polar tracking, click this arrow which is right next to it, and then select an angle. For example, right now 90 is selected, and when it is selected, AutoCAD is showing me these green tracking vectors at 90-degree intervals. So 90, the right here, then we have 180, 270, and then 0 degree. Now if I change that to 30 degrees, it will show me these vectors at 30-degree intervals. So 0, then 30, 60, 90, 120, and so on. So with that, you can just check the angle, it is 30, then type the length, and you are done. So this polar tracking is really good if you want to restrict your line to certain angles. So I'll change it back to 90. Now here is another thing. What if you want to make your line only horizontally or vertically? In that case, just click at a point, start your line wherever you want to, and right now with polar tracking active, you can just make it anywhere you want. You can just click anywhere. But now if I activate this ortho mode, which is right next to this polar tracking, the polar tracking will automatically deactivate because they are kind of opposite of one another, and you can now only make your line in horizontal direction or vertical direction. So there we are, it can only make it like this no matter where your cursor is. Now the only exception to this rule is when you select an existing point, only then it will snap it like this. Otherwise it can only make horizontally or vertically. To exit out of this, just go to this polar tracking, and once again we are back to the normal way of making lines in any direction. Alright, so now we have made lots of different things here, but let's just clean it up now. So for cleaning it up, I'll select this entire drawing by making a window, and then you can click on this erase option, or you can press the delete key on your keyboard and it's gone. Now dynamic input is a really great way of making these lines very easily. Let me show you how that helps. So far we have made our lines without using dynamic input, but now we'll use it. So dynamic input option is right here. Once again, if it is not showing up, go to this customization, this 3- line, and activate dynamic input. When this is checked, the dynamic input will show up like this with a plus and this bar. I'll activate this. By the way, you can activate it using F12 function key as well. Now I'll go to line tool again, and this time things are slightly different. We have this tool tip on the cursor. So if I click at a point, now I not only have the length but also this angle. So both of these things are now visible on the cursor and in the drawing area directly. So we now have a visual reference as to what we are making. So let's say we want to make this line of length 10 unit. Right now it's 11.50. I'll simply type 10. Okay, so that is done. Now to go to this angle value, press tab key and the length value will be locked. So now as you can see, the line of length 10 is locked and the angle is changing. But now I want to restrict this angle to, let's say, 45 degrees. So I'll type 45. And you can press tab key to go back to the length value, or if you are satisfied with the result, just press enter and it is done. So line of length 10 unit at an angle of 45 is made. Now you can make it again. So here also you can see the angle, you can see the length. So let's say we want 12 unit length for the line and the angle is 30 degrees in the downward direction. You don't need to add minus sign, plus sign. You can see the visual reference here. So just type 30, press enter and it is done. So in this way also, using dynamic input, you can make geometries very easily. I'll press escape and I'll delete these two lines. Now I don't prefer using dynamic input, but if you want to use it, keep it active. But for the sake of this complete tutorial, I'll keep it deactivated. We'll see more use cases of dynamic input when making rectangles, but for now, let's go to the next command, which is polyline. So the polyline is right next to this line tool. And with polyline, well, you'll get almost similar results. So let's just make it. So I'll click at a point, then second, third, fourth, and so on. So that's polyline. Now it may look very familiar, just like line tool. I'll press escape to exit the command. And now I'll make the line tool just to show you a comparison of these two tools. All right. And I'll press escape, or you can even press enter key to exit this command. Now the first difference is this. If you select line, it's going to select only that particular segment. If you select polyline, well, these are connected curves, so it will select the entire segment. Not just that, in polyline, you have more options. For example, you can select this polyline and you can use these grips to change the shape, and you can use this midpoint grip, hover your cursor and change the shape even further. For example, you can convert it to an arc. The same thing is not possible with line. If you select it, you have to select both the lines, then the common grip, then you can change the shape, but there is no option of converting it into an arc, or maybe you cannot even add an extra edge, which you can do here. So if I select this, hover my cursor, I can add an extra vertex, kind of like this. In fact, I can even remove existing vertices. For example, I'll just hover my cursor here and then I'll select remove vertex and it's done. So that's the difference between line and polyline. Now, which one should you use? Well, it depends entirely on you and the type of drawing that you are making. For simple blocks and other objects, polyline is just good, though your drawing size may slightly increase because polyline has a lot of extra features. But if you want ease of use and if you want to modify your drawing later, then having polyline as the base is really good. All right, now let's talk about circles. So I'll open a completely new tab and I'll close this one here. And if it's prompting me to save it, I'm not going to save it. I'll just click on no. Now for circle, the command is C. So you can type C, press enter, and the circle command will start like this. However, if you want to start circle from here, you can go to this draw panel and click this drop down, and then we have 6 different ways of making a circle. You can select the first one, and that's C command. So here I'll click on center radius, and now just look at the command prompt. So the prompt will tell you what the next steps are. So here the next step is specify center point for circle. So click at a point and that will become the center for this circle. Now the next prompt is specify radius. So I'll just type 10 as the radius and enter, and here we are. We've got a circle of radius 10 unit. All right, I'll go to circle again. I'll click at a point, and now again the prompt is specify radius, but look at this. After or we have a diameter prompt. So just select this, just type D, press enter or click on it. And now this will change to specify diameter. So whatever value you will add now will become the diameter. So if I type 10, the radius will be 5, diameter will be 10. Press enter and here we are, we have got the circle. Now the same option is also available here, center diameter. So you can directly select this if you want to make a circle with a particular diameter value. And then we have the 2-point circle. Basically, this will ensure that you make circle on the diametrically opposite sides. For example, if I have a line and I want to make a circle that touches both the end point, then this is the option that I'd use. So I'll select 2-point, first, second, and done. Now this line will be the diameter. Then we have 3-point option. So you can select first point, second point, and third point. And this circle will pass through all the 3 selected points. And then we have tangent, tangent, radius. Now before I do that, I just want to clean this drawing up a little bit at least. So here we have a bit of room here. Now let's go to tangent, tangent, radius. I'll select this circle, anywhere on this circle is fine. And then this circle anywhere is fine. And then for the radius, maybe I'll use 10 and enter. And here we are. So we have got this circle, which is tangent here, and the radius is 10. And then finally, we have the tritangent. So basically select tangent, 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 select 3 objects, and the circle will be tangent on all the 3 objects. Now, before moving further, let me show you how to save a drawing. So let's say you want to save it. Go to application, save as, or simply click on save. If you are saving it for the first time, specify location, give it a name, and just save it. For example, here I'll call it circles. And now it will save it in AutoCAD 2018 format because that's the latest DWG format available. Even in 2025, AutoCAD will save it in 2018, which means the files created with 2025 can be used by any version from 2018 up to 2025. So that's a good thing. It has a really long backward compatibility. But if you want to save it in even older versions, you can go to the drop down and save it in 2013. And now any version after 2013 will be able to open this file. In this case, I'll just change it to 2018, circles, save, and the file is saved here on my desktop. So now let's talk about making arcs. So you can make an arc using this arc flyout from the draw panel, and it has 11 different ways of making an arc. Let's start with the first one, which is 3-point arc. And this one is quite simple. All you need is 3 points. So first point, second point, third point, and we have an arc that follows the 3 points. Now to make this thing much clearer, I'll make a simple line and I'll simply add a particular distance here rather than making it randomly. So maybe let's just make it of length 12 unit, and then I'll make another line right here of length 6 unit. All right, and now I'll make it again. So basically what we need is first point, then here's the second point, and here's the third point. Now there are other methods as well here, but we are not going to explore all of these methods. Rather, we'll look at the options that are very frequently used. For example, start end radius. Now in this case, you need to start from a starting point. So maybe I'll just select this as the starting point, and then I'll select this as the end point. And now you need to specify the radius value. Now the radius in this case should be larger than 3 unit. Why? Because we have selected the first and end point of this line as the starting and end point. And if you make any arc which is of radius is smaller than 6 unit, which is the radius of this line of length 12 unit has a kind of radius of 6 because half of that length is 6. If you make it less than 6, then a simple arc touching both the starting and end point is not possible. So you need to ensure that radius is more than 6. So I'll just type 9, enter, and there we have it. So now starting point, end point, and the radius of this arc is, well, 9. Now this arc is made in this upward direction because of the way I selected the starting and end point. But if you want to make it below this, just make it like this. I'll delete it. I'll go to arc, start, end radius. Now I'll select this as the starting point and this one as the end point. So what's happening basically is it will start from this point and then in anti-clockwise it will move it. So anti-clockwise is just below that. If I start from this point, the right one, and then I select the left point, then the anti-clockwise will be above the line. That's the difference. Again, I'll just make it of radius 15 and we have this. Now let's use one more arc here, which is center, start, end. So here you need to start with center point, then you need to specify the starting point and then end point. Maybe it could be here, 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 anywhere you like. And once again, it's just following this anti-clockwise rule. So if you want to start it from this point and then end it here, then it will just follow this anti-clockwise direction and make it below the line. If, however, you want to reverse the direction, even now, you can press and hold your control key and now it will automatically reverse the direction no matter where your starting point is. So I can click to make it even below the line if I'm starting here. Now let's talk about the rectangle tool. So I'll select it all and delete it. The rectangle command is right here and it will essentially make a polygon. So if I go to rectangle, click at a point and second, I'll get this rectangle. You can select any point of this rectangle and it will select it entirely like this as a single unit, and that's why we call it polyline. Now this rectangle is not precise, but if you want to make a precise rectangle, then go to rectangle, click at a point and then type at. Now this at is important. If you are not using dynamic input, then you need to type at and then type length, which is the distance along x-axis. So I'll type 10, 5. And 5 is the distance along y-axis or the width of this rectangle. Now I'll press enter and here we are. We have got 10 along x-axis, 5 along y-axis. Now why we used at sign before rectangle? Well, that's something which I've explained in a video of our complete AutoCAD 2022 beginner course. The link of that video is in the description. Now, I'll also show you another method of making this rectangle, but this time using dynamic input, which will make things a lot easier. So I'll delete it. I'll go to rectangle and now let's activate this dynamic input right here. All right, now we have this tooltip. So let's click at a point and now we have these two markers here for the length and width. All you need to do is just type in a value for length. For example, here I'll type 10 and that's the length. Now press tab key and it will switch to width. For the width, I'll type 5 and press enter and done. It's as easy as that. So with this dynamic input, you can very easily make it without using at sign. I don't like it that much, so I'll deactivate dynamic input going forward. And you can keep it off as well just to keep everything similar. All right, now let's talk about the modify tools. So far we have seen the drawing related commands. It's time to just modify something, and for that I'll use this move and copy drawing. By the way, all the drawings that I'll be using here in this tutorial series is available for download. You can download them using link in the description of this video. So for this drawing, we have a rectangle here and then we have a circle. Let's say we want to move this circle on this corner. For that, I'll go to move command. I'll select the object, in this case circle, and then press enter. Now specify base point. As I mentioned before, always follow the command line. Specify base point. Now base point is the point which you'll use okay, in this case on circle, to pick the object, and then specify second point. That's the point where you want to drop it. Done. And that's move command. Now copy command is very similar. The difference being in this case, it will make a copy. So go to copy, select this object, press enter. Now click at a point from where you want to pick it, and then click on the point where you want to drop it. That's it. And you can keep dropping it on several points. Even without any existing geometry, you can do that. Press escape to exit the command, and that's the copy tool. Now let's talk about rotate command. And for rotate command, I'll once again go to our empty drawing, which was this one. I'll delete it, and I'll start with a simple straight line. Now this straight line is along x-axis. So I'll go to rotate, which is right here, select the object, and now press enter. Now the command line will prompt you to specify the base point, and base point will be the point that remains fixed. In this case, I'll select this left point, and now the line will start rotating with my cursor. So I can click anywhere in the drawing area to just rotate it to that point, or I can specify an angle. In this case, I'll add an angle of 30. So I'll type 30. You don't need to type angle sign, simply type 30, press enter, and that's it. Now what just happened here? It rotated this line with respect to its original angle. So this was the original line, right? Obviously the length is longer here because I want to explain something, but this angle from this to this is 30 degrees. Now what if our line was actually inclined like this? What if it was not horizontal? In that case, the angle measurement will start from this original line again. So the 30-degree angle will be slightly here, and that 30 may not be exactly equal to what AutoCAD would expect. So in AutoCAD, angle is measured from positive side of x-axis, but only for the rotate command, angle is measured from the original position of that object. So let's say I want to now rotate this line, which is at a random angle. So I'll go to rotate, select it, enter, now specify base point, and now if I type, let's say 90, it will rotate it to an angle of 90 degrees with respect to this line wherever it was originally. But before I do that, I want to add one more twist here. I'll just simply click on this copy option, and now the main object will stay here and a copy will be rotated. So now if I type 90, enter, we have this, and you can clearly see that this angle is 90, right? Because that's the angle which it is making with original line. All right, so with that, let's now go to the mirror tool. So I'll use this mirror drawing. Now in this case, we have this mirroring line and we have an object. Let's say we want to make a mirrored copy of this object along this side. For that, select mirror, and now start by selecting objects that you want to mirror. In this case, I'll select this entire set of objects and press enter. Now specify the first point of mirror line, which is this point. Second point of mirror line, which is this one. And now press enter. And we have the mirrored copy here. So the original object will stay here and a mirrored copy will be made. Now we don't actually need this mirroring line. So for showing it in a different way, I'll press Ctrl Z or Ctrl Z. And now we are back to original drawing. And let's try mirror again. So I'll select it all and press enter. And now let's specify the first point of mirroring line, which I'll do randomly here, and the second point may be randomly here. So you can select any point in the open space as well. You don't need any specific point. In fact, you can even select the object itself for mirroring line. So go to mirror, select object, enter, select this as the starting point, this is the end point, and press enter, and we have this mirrored copy. If you don't want the original object, you can remove that as well. So go to mirror, select it all, and enter. Now specify the first point, second point, and there is a small prompt here. Erase source object. Well, by default it is no. This time let's select yes, and the source object will be deleted and the copied will well remain. All right, let's now go to join and explode, and for this I'm once again going to select a blank drawing here. So I'll delete it and I'll make a completely blank drawing using rectangle. We have a polyline here. Now in this case, we have a rectangle which is essentially a polyline. So if I select it, it's going to just make 4 connected curves like this. But what if I want to break it into 4 separate line segments? In that case, you can use explode command. So explode command is right here. Just select explode, select the object and press enter. And now this polyline is broken into 4 separate segments. That's it. Now the opposite of explode command is join. So if you want to join it all into one unit again, just go to modify, expand the panel like this, and here is the join tool. You can use its command alias J as well. And by the way, the command alias for explode is X. So I'll simply select J or this join tool. Then I'll select this entire geometry and press enter. Now it's once again a polyline. So explode and join are opposite of one another. Now there is one more thing about join tool. If you have objects like this line, and then I'll leave a gap and then I'll make another line, then it can join these two lines and merge the gap as well. Let me show you how. So go to join, select this point and then select this point and press enter. So there we are. It just merged the gap and created a single line. Now let's talk about the fillet command. For that, I'll use this fillet drawing. Okay, in this case, we have a rectangle and we have a bunch of other geometries. So let's start with fillet. And the fillet command will essentially add radius to sharp corners, circular edges, you can say. So here in this case, we have these 4 sharp corners on our rectangle and we want to add fillet here. So the first step for adding fillet command is, well, radius. You need to tell AutoCAD what radius you want to use. So after selecting the fillet command from here, or you can use F command alias to start fillet, just go to this radius option. Now this is the only command so far where the workflow is slightly different and it doesn't follow the command line, because command line is directly saying this, select first object, but of course we don't want to. We want to first specify radius. Currently the radius specified is 0 and we can work with 0 radius, which I'll show you in a moment, but for now we need some radius value. So I'll just go to radius, and in this case I just need to figure out how long this length is. So maybe I'll just keep my cursor here and move it down. It looks like it is, length is about 5 units. So this length is 5. So I think a radius of 1 unit will just look fine. So I'll type 1 and enter. Now I'll select first point, second point, and done. That's the fillet. Now the command will automatically exit, but you can press enter and it will repeat the last command with exact values, including radius of 1. So now I can select first, second, and done. Press enter again and it will repeat. But if I add the fillet again, it will again exit and then I again have to start it. If you don't want it like that, click on multiple and now the command won't exit even after adding the fillet. The command is still active. You can keep on adding as many fillets as you want. You can add it here. You can add fillet here as well. So it doesn't matter if they are crossing or if it's open. So I'll press escape and Control Z a couple of times just to return back to the original drawing. Okay, let's look at the next example of fillet command. So I'll select fillet here. And what if we want to add fillet on all the 4 vertices? Well, for that we have a direct method. I'll go to radius and first I'll select the radius of, let's say, 0.5 unit this time. Press enter. And now I'll select this polyline option. As this one is made with a polyline, which is the connected curves, it will work here in this case. So I'll go to polyline, I'll select on any of these lines and we have fillet on all the 4 vertices. That's it. Let's look at more options related to fillet. So I'll go to fillet and radius, and now let's make a fillet of radius 0. I'll type 0, enter, and we can actually make fillet with 0 like this. So it will basically merge it here. If I select fillet of radius 0 on this open curve, select, it will merge it at one point. Not just that, you can use fillet of radius 0 on 2 parallel lines. In fact, fillet radius is completely irrelevant in case of parallel lines, because no matter what radius you use, you can basically press enter to repeat the last command. By the way, that's what I'm doing. So I'll press enter, repeat the last command, and now I'll select this and this. Look at this. It will add the semicircular arc no matter what your radius is. So these are some of the great things about fillet. Now let's talk about the trim command. So I'll go to trim, and here we have a drawing that I'll be using. Now the trim command will essentially trim the extra components that you don't want from your drawing, and the trim command is right here. You can also use its command alias TR. So I'll go to trim, and now you can simply click on any edge or any part of the line and it will trim it like this. You can even delete complete segments just by clicking on that. So this trim feature is rather new. The trim command was, well, added way back in AutoCAD, but this new feature where you can even delete objects is new. So if you are using an older version of AutoCAD, then selecting a single object or just one last piece of an object won't work, won't delete. But if you are working with latest version of AutoCAD, well, then in that case, clicking on any object will basically delete it. So if you are using an older version and if it's not working, then the workflow will be slightly different. It will be like this. Go to trim and now press enter. Now that extra step is required. So press enter and now you can click on objects and it will trim. But again, it won't trim the last segment. For example, in this case, if I maybe trim it all, then this entire thing, this thing is last segment. If you click it, it won't delete in older AutoCADs. But not with latest AutoCAD, it will obviously delete it. Now the opposite of trim command is extend, and to explain it, I'll just make a circle like this and maybe one more circle here. All right, now I'll go to trim, this arrow, and select extend, and all you need to do is select a segment. It will extend it up to the next boundary. Click again, next boundary. Here also, if I click here, it will extend it to the next boundary, but the next boundary is this complete circle. That's why it's not extending. So I can just add maybe a few boundaries here like this, and now it will work. So go to extend, select, and look at this. Next boundary, again next boundary, and it won't extend because now if extended, it will become a circle. So that's how extend command works. Now in this case, as this is a polyline, I thought that this is just a line. If it were a line, it will extend it here. But now since this is a polyline, it is extending in this direction. Also, if you have a straight line and if you're not sure where it's going to extend, well, kind of like this. If I make it like this, what will happen if I just select extend and maybe click on this line? Well, in that case, it depends on where you are clicking. If you click close to left point, it will extend towards left. Close to right, it will extend to the right, and there is no way you can click on the center. It will either be slightly towards left or slightly towards right. And now in the next and the final modify tools, we'll talk about offset. So let's go to offset, and here we have a drawing. Now in this case, this drawing is made with one single polyline, and this drawing is made with one single polyline. But before I explain offset, I'll explode this outer geometry. So I'll select it and I'll select explode. We have already seen it. It will break this entire thing into separate segments. So arc, line, line, and so on. Now I'll go to offset and let's specify an offset distance. So this length, maybe let's just check it, and you can actually check it simply by hovering your cursor and then moving it along. And if you move it on this tooltip, you can see the distance changing. So I can now see that this distance is about 1.6 units. So this entire length, that will give me an idea of the scale on which I'm working. Now that I know the scale, after selecting offset command, the first thing that I'll do is I'll select the distance, which is 0. Let's say 2, and enter. Now if I click on this line, I can offset it to a distance of 0.2 like this. I can click here and there, click and here. So basically it will make another geometry similar to the one you've selected at certain distance, and that's offset. Now in this case, this offset is made using broken segments because, well, our drawing is exploded. But what if we just join our entire drawing? In that case, we'll get one single segment, and this type of gap will be merged as well. So let's just delete it all, and now let's go to join. So modify, join, and I'll select this entire geometry. You don't have to worry about selecting these objects because they are not connected with this. So if they are not connected, it won't affect the join tool. Press enter, and now this is joined into one single unit. And let's now go to offset, 0.2, enter, or you can use any other distance if you want. Click on this, and now if I click outside, we have this. If I click inside, we have this offset. So this segment is also merged. Now you can offset this. If you want, you can offset this, you can offset this. So that's how you can create offsets. If you want to create multiple offsets, well, that option is also here. So I'll press Ctrl Z, I'll go to offset, and maybe I'll add 0.1 as the distance, and I'll select this boundary, and here we have multiple. Click on multiple, and now keep clicking outside or maybe inside, and you'll have multiple offsets. All right, so before we move any further, let's make this practice drawing, and then we'll use this practice drawing for the remaining topics. So I'll just move it out of this window here, and we'll start right from scratch. So let's go to new, and with the default template, we'll start it. We can also click on this view cube. It was hidden, so we'll bring it back. Now the first step is unit. So let's type UN, press enter, and here we have the drawing unit window. Now here I'll select decimal, and then in the precision, 2 decimal places is just fine. And for the insertion scale, I'll use millimeter, and then OK. So with that set, let's go to line tool. And I'll start with the first line, the bottom one, and I'll make it of length 10 unit and enter. In this case, 10 unit is 10 mm. So here it is 5, enter. And now we need to make it at an angle of 30 degrees. So I'll type angle sign and then 30 and enter. So here we are. Now this length is 6 unit. So I'll type 6 and enter. Now once again, we'll go in this direction and we'll type a length of 5 unit and enter. Now it will go to this direction. The length is 8 and enter. And now we'll move it down. And in this direction, the length is 4, enter. And now we just need to track this point and make sure that it is exactly above this point. For that, you can go to this point, but don't click. Simply hover your cursor and move it up. Now in this case, what is happening here? It's automatically recognizing this point and creating this green tracking line. We'll talk about it in a moment, but for now, let's just move it up, 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 and right about here. When we see both the green lines, the horizontal and vertical ones, click and then click here. And we have the base shape done. Let's press escape. And now let's make the second part of this drawing. For that, I'll go to rectangle and I'll just randomly click anywhere inside or maybe even outside this one, and I'll make the rectangle of length 6. So I'll type at length is 6, comma, width is 1 and enter. So we have this rectangle of length 6 and width 1. Let's move it where it should be. So I'll select it. I'll go to move. I'll select this midpoint and I'll move it right about here on this midpoint. Now I'll select it again and I'll select move, and any point is just fine. Move it up to a distance of 1 unit and we are done. Okay, so this is done. Now in this case, this gap is 1 unit, but in our actual drawing, this gap is 1.6. So we need to increase the gap. Now let me show you how that can be done. For that, you can select this and then click on this grip, this midpoint grip, and move it up. Now all you need to do is just type 0.6 because we already have 1 unit gap here. So 0.6, enter, and now this is 1.6. So that's how you can change the existing shapes. Let's now add fillet. So I'll go to fillet, and here the fillet is 2 unit. So let's go to radius, and the fillet radius is 2 and enter. Now I'll select this point and this, and we're done. Let's repeat the process. So press enter, it will repeat the last fillet with the same parameters and select these two, and we are done. Now we just need to make a circle here with exact same center as this arc. So let's go to circle, select the same center as this, and just type 1 and enter. And we have it. And that completes our drawing. Almost. We just need to add these two semicircular shapes. Now to do that, I'll select this entire drawing, only this rectangle, and I'll go to explode. Now let's get rid of this line and this line, delete it, and let's go to fillet. Now whatever the radius is, it doesn't matter. Simply add the fillet here, press enter, add the fillet here, and we are done. It's as easy as that. So we've used the tools that we learned so far to make this drawing. Now that the drawing is made, let's add more details into this. And before we do that, let me show you what object snap is, because we've been using it for the entire tutorial, but I haven't yet explained it. It's a very important tool, and that tool is right here on the status bar. It looks like a box with another at top of it. We also have this small arrow. If you click it, it's going to show this list. Now, of course, we are not going to look into this entire list, but if you want to know about every single snap point, then I've added a link to tutorial in the description of this video that you can check. For this case, however, we'll look at most of these tools. Let's start with endpoint, midpoint, and center. So these three are checked, which means these three are active. If we deactivate it, and maybe let's just deactivate this as well. Now none of these are selected. And if I go to line tool and try and bring my cursor close to any existing point, AutoCAD won't recognize it. Now if I go to this and select endpoint, now it will recognize endpoint like this. That's an endpoint. And when it recognizes it, it will make this kind of green box. In some cases, it will make triangle and other shapes. And also on the tooltip, it will show the name of that point. Okay, so it is recognizing endpoint. Now if I go to this point, it's not recognizing the midpoint. Let's go to this and select midpoint, and it will now recognize this midpoint, which is shown with this triangle. Similarly, we have a center here, which is not visible. So let's go to this, select center. Now the center is also visible. So in this way, these snap points are important. With these snap points visible, you can click on any point and you can be sure that it's exactly selecting that point. Without that, it's not possible to exactly select the relevant points. So now you know what midpoint, endpoint, and center is. Let's look at geometric center. So geometric center is essentially the centroid or center of mass of a closed polyline shape. For example, if I make a polyline, a random one, just like this, it's really hard to tell where the center of mass for this polyline will be, but not if you select geometric center, go to any draw object and then bring your cursor close. At some point it's going to highlight this, which is geometric center. Now this is the centroid or the center of mass of this particular shape. It only works with closed polylines like this. Now the next one, which is quite helpful, is quadrant. So if you activate quadrant, you can select 4 quadrants of a circle. So in case of circle, we have this as the first, second, third, fourth. These are the 4 quadrants. Then we have intersection, which is quite self-explanatory. If you make a line or any other geometry, and if it is intersecting different curves, then the point of intersection will highlight if you select intersection. So now if I bring my cursor close to this, of course you need to ensure that a command is active, otherwise it won't highlight. So it is active. Now bring it closer and look at this. It is highlighting the intersection points. And then we have extension, insertion, perpendicular, tangent, and so on, which we are not going to discuss, maybe except for tangent. So I'll just hide quadrant, geometric center, and I'll activate tangent for a moment just to show you what it is. So I'll go to line tool, and let's say we want to start from here and we want to drop a tangent on this circle. So bring it here and there we are. It's going to show the tangent. So tangent is basically a line that just touches it and then goes beyond that circle without intersecting it. So tangent will highlight it. Now you might be wondering, if it's so useful that it can just show all the points that we need for making a drawing, then why not we just keep it active all the time? Well, there is a reason. If you activate all of these points, then the points at close proximity, they will all highlight. And at some point you may end up making mistakes, that let's say if you want to add intersection point and then you end up selecting end. For example, if I have a line that looks like this. Now look at this here. We have these 2 points in close proximity. This is intersection and this is endpoint. What if you just want to select an endpoint and then intersection highlights? So you just need to make sure that only relevant points are active to avoid any accidental object snap selections. So I'll just delete this line. So for our entire example, we'll keep tangent off, and these are the only 4 points that we keep on: end, mid, center, and intersection. And as and when needed, we'll deactivate or activate other snap points. Now this drawing is complete, but it has one big missing thing before we add dimension, and that is some construction geometries. So let's see how we can do that, how we can add it. So construction geometries are required for adding dimensions, which we'll talk about next. So let's add the first construction geometry using Annotate tab. On the Annotate tab, we have this center mark and center line tool on the center line panel. Let's go to center mark, and then I'll select on this circle, and the center mark is added. Now this is a construction geometry, and we'll change its properties a little bit to make it better. But let's first add center line as well. Here also we can add a center line. So let's go to center line and then select the first line, second line, and a center line is added. So now you can see what these things are. Basically, they'll add these kind of geometries right where it should be. So we have added the center line, and here we have the center mark. Now you can click these grips, of course, just like I'm doing, and you can change its length. So maybe I'll just make it longer, like so. There we are. Now the next property that we need to change here is its transparency. The transparency of these construction geometries is exactly the same as the main object, which should not be the case. It should be a bit transparent so that you can identify which one is main geometry and which one is construction. So I'll select both of these objects, and right here in the properties panel, if you expand it, you're going to see an option of transparency. You can just select any transparency you want from 0 to 90. I'll type 80 and enter. After typing 80, it will show it like this. So there is a bit of transparency now. Now, even after adding transparency, if it is not showing this kind of, well, transparency, then you need to ensure that the status bar option is active, and that option is transparency display. So go to 3 dash and make sure transparency is checked. When checked, it will show this chessboard kind of symbol. If it is on, transparency will show. If it is not, transparency won't show, even if it's added. So make sure this chessboard kind of symbol is on. All right, now going forward, let's use the practice drawing that I've already made. So you have already made the practice drawing, but I'll be using a ready-made one, which is exactly like what we did just now. So I'll open the practice drawing, which is this one. We just now made it, but now I'll add again the center mark, the center line, and even more details before we can modify it. So let's quickly go to annotate, center mark, add it, center line, add it. All right, and then maybe modify its length. By the way, you can download this drawing from the folder which is linked in the description of this video. So it's available for you to download, and we are done. Now we also want to add construction line here and here because we want to use this corner as a reference for dimensioning. So I'll go to home and I'll go to line and I'll select this midpoint, make it long enough like this, and then again a line like this. Now to convert this solid line into this kind of line, all you need to do is just go to properties, this drop down right here, and select center 2. But before you do that, select both of these lines. So this one, and select this, and it's added. But this one is not center line, so we want to make it different. We want to add dashed line here. So let's go to drop down, other, load, and right here you can select from this list. So I want simple dash, so I'll select this dash line and OK and OK. Now the dash line will show up in this list. All you need to do is select both of these lines, go to the drop down and select dashed. Done. Now it looks like it's perfectly added, but we want to change the gap between these two lines. We want to make a smaller dashed line. So I'll select both of them, right click, I'll go to properties. And here in the line type scale option, I'll just select a smaller scale of, let's say, 0.5. And now, as you can see, the gap has changed. Let's close this and press escape. Okay, we are almost ready. All we need to do is just trim this extra part. So let's go to trim this, and trim this, and done. Now before we add the dimensioning, just like the previous example, we'll add transparency. But I'm not going to add transparency here using properties, and I'll show you why. Because we will use a different approach here for adding transparency, and that's why I started this new drawing rather than using the one which okay. So for dimensioning, you can use the annotation panel, which is right here, or you can go to annotate and use the dimension tool from here. They're both same. So I'll be using this annotation panel from here. Let's start with linear. From this drop down, we have linear, which is basically the dimension tool for adding horizontal and vertical dimensions. Now here I'll select the first point, then second point, and then third point wherever you want to drop the dimension. And we are done. The dimension is added, but we have so many problems with the dimension. Size of this dimension is just okay, but we can make it a bit larger to make it clear and visible on the drawing area. And also 4 decimal places, well, that's not what we want. We just want 2 decimal places. So let's fix these two things. Now to fix it, we need to go to Dimension Style Manager, which is in the annotation panel. So expand it, and this arrow with a paintbrush icon is Dimension Style Manager. Click it. And here it's going to show you 2 dimension style, annotative and standard. We are using standard because that's what is highlighted. And also you can see that the current style is a standard. So this one is a standard style. So with your current style selected, click on modify. And we have so many options. Don't get overwhelmed. We only need few options from fit tab and primary unit tab. So first is primary unit. And here you can see the precision is set to 4 decimal places. Change that to 2. Now go to fit tab. And here we have overall scale, which is set to 1. Let's increase it. Let's make it 1.6, I think. This will make its size 1.6 times of its original value. Click OK, close, and done. Now we have 2 decimal places and the dimension looks good as well. So with these changes, we'll add more dimensions to this. So I'll go to linear. I'll add another dimension here and it looks perfect. So we have the dimension with 2 decimal places. We can now add more dimensions. So here is the next dimension. From this point to this, we have 5 unit. So far we've added only linear dimensions, but what if we want to add an aligned dimension like this? Now this won't work with linear because if you add linear here, it will either add a vertical one or a simple horizontal one. It won't add an aligned one, which you can do with aligned. So select aligned. Now click on these 2 points and it will align parallelly with respect to your line like this. Okay, what else we need? Let's go to linear, add this dimension here. And once again, let's add another dimension from this to this point. And that's why we added this construction geometry. Okay, We also want to add another angular dimension here, but we don't have anything for reference. So here also we'll add a reference line like line. Let's go to this and make this line. Now we also want to convert this line exactly like this, but we don't want to make it again. So what we can do, we can use match properties. Select match properties, click on this point, this line actually, and then select this line and done. So it will immediately take the properties of this selected line. And now you can go to the next option, which is angular. Select this, this, and add the angular dimension like this. Okay, what else? Then we have here radius. We can add radius dimension for an arc like this, and we can add diameter for this. Now you can add it inside or you can just move it outside like this. And you can add remaining dimensions, one for the slot from maybe this point to this. And I'll just ensure that it is added right about here. And then another dimension from here to here, this center to this center. Now there are also other dimensions, for example, this gap that you can add, and then you can add another one, a center line, just to show that this slot is exactly at the center of this entire drawing, and other dimensions to make it fully constrained. But for our example, I think we have done sufficient dimensions now. Let's now go to the next step, which is using layers to make it even clearer. Now using layers, we can add different parts of the drawing on different layer and just categorize it in a logical way. Let me show you how layers work. So layer is right here. And if you click on this layer properties, it will show you the current list of layer, which is layer 0 and def points. Now I'll bring it here, and layer 0 is the one which is active. As you can see, it has a checkbox here. And def point is just a default layer which is added automatically when you add dimensions. So you can ignore this layer completely. Now, if you want to make a new layer, you can click on this new layer and add it. For example, here I'll name it DIM and enter. Now I'll click on this again and I'll call it construction, CONST, and enter. So we now added two more layers. Now there is an advantage of adding new layers. Well, let me show you what that is. But before I do that, I want to highlight this thing here. It looks like the print option is deactivated here and here, which means anything on this layer and this layer won't show up. And that happened because we started making new layer with def point selected. In def point, print option is default deactivated. So it's just deactivated. And anything if you put on def point won't show up on your printed drawing. So it took the properties of this def point layer for the next two layers because that was selected. So I'll just click here and then here to uncheck it. Now anything on these two layers will show up. Okay, what's next? Next is the color. So I'll go to dim, I'll click on this color box and I'll change its color to green. Then I'll go to construction geometry and I'll change its color to magenta. Done. And we are done. Let's now close it and let's put these objects on their respective layer. So I'll select this drawing, this dimension in fact, then this one, this one, this one, and this one. Let's now go to this drop down and select dim because we want to put it on dim layer or the dimension layer. Now press escape and immediately you'll notice that it will take the properties of that new layer. Now these things are construction geometry. So let's select these things, the construction geometries that we have in the drawing. All right. And let's put it on construction layer. And it took the properties of the construction layer. As simple as that. Not just that, we'll add even more properties. Now remember we added transparency here for the construction geometry. Well, we'll do that again, but this time without using properties. Using layer, you can control properties for an entire layer, and then anything you put on that layer will take that properties automatically. You don't have to change it individually, just like we were doing here. So let's now go to layer properties, and here we have transparency for every layer. So I'll go to construction and the transparency here, I'll change that to 80, and I'll do the same for dim as well. For dimensions, I'll just make it 60 or even 50 is fine, but 60 is just good. All right, done. Close it and we can now clearly see the drawing like this. So the main drawing is highlighted, it's clear, and then we have construction kind of like in the background. Transparency is just way too much, so maybe I'll just make this one 60 as well. All right, and here we are. So that's a proper way of making drawing using layers and other properties. All right, so now let's talk about blocks. So here we have a wall with simple door and a window. Now let's consider a situation where we want to add multiple windows here, and after adding we realized that we need to change the way this window is added. For example, if I add several copies of this window, I'll just make few copies here like that, and maybe another row as well here. So copy and just a new row. Now after adding it, I realized that I need to change its shape. Now in that case, what we can do? Well, we can delete all the other references, make a modification, then copy and paste it again, which is time consuming. And also it's error prone, because in this case we just have 8 blocks which we can see, but if your drawing is large, then you never know where you've added your blocks and you may not be able to modify all the references. So it's better to create a block, because in that case modifying one will modify all the references of that block. Let me show you how that works. So I'll close it all, actually delete it all, except for the main object, which is made with polyline, line, circle, and so on, arc in fact. And then I'll go to create and I'll start with name. So let's call it window. All right, now select pick point and select a pick point. In this case, I'll select lower left corner. It doesn't matter which one you select. So you can select any other point if you want. Then go to select object and select this entire set of objects, press enter. Now we have other options like retain and delete, which we are not going to select. You can select convert to block, but selecting these two other options won't make a difference, that much of a difference in fact. So you can select these options and you'll still end up with block, but we are not going to discuss it now. So we'll only select convert to block. In fact, I've explained everything about this simple block and dynamic block and lots of other things in our AutoCAD complete course. It is linked in the description. Now moving on, make sure annotative option is unchecked, scale uniformly unchecked, allow exploding is checked. Open in block editor should be unchecked, and then click OK. So we now have a block. If you hover your cursor, it will show this entire thing as a block reference. If you select it, it will only highlight the base point. Not just that, if you go to insert, you now have the same block, which you can insert as one unit, as single unit like this. If you copy it, well, you'll end up with more blocks. You can also make another row if you want, just like we did in the previous case. And now if you want to modify just any reference of this block, select block, any one of these blocks. You can just select, right click and go to block editor. Now this is block editor environment, where block editor will show up this tab with this gray background, and here it will work like simple object again. You can make modifications here. For example, you can delete the line and then we'll add a circle. For that, I'll go to home tab, circle, and I'll just add a circle. I'll trim this extra part here, and then I'll add maybe one more circle right about here, and then I'll make a mirrored copy of this. So go to mirror and select it like this. So we have made these modifications. Of course, as you can see, this is a new, completely new kind of window. With that, I'll go to close block editor, save the changes, and all the references are modified. And that's the power of using a block rather than using simple object. Not just that, in the insert panel, you can see that this one is a new window like this. All right. Now, what if you want to insert your block with some different properties? For that, you can go to insert and you can select these palettes. No matter what you select here, it will always open the block palette. But in this case, I'll just select recent blocks. And here we are, we've got the palette. Now I'll just close this, and here is the recent tab. If you select current drawing, it will show the blocks in your current drawing. If you select recent tab, it will show all the recently used blocks from different drawings. Favorite is the tab where all your favorite blocks will show up. You have to mark your blocks as favorite to show up here. And then we have libraries. You can create library of blocks and the libraries will show up here. Now we have discussed all about creating libraries as well, how to make our library and everything about it in this pinned video. Now let's go to current drawing, and here we'll see this one. So when you select a block, it will show these extra options which you can use. Now we'll use a few options. For example, here we have insertion point checked, and then we have a scale option which is not checked. Maybe let's just check it. And now if you want AutoCAD to prompt for a scale, then you can do it from here. Now you can change it uniformly or non-uniformly using this drop down, but here I'll just leave it at the default. And now when you insert a block, it will give an extra prompt of a scale where you can change the scale. If you select this rotation option, you can even specify the rotation angle when adding the block. So with that selected, let's add this block. So I'll click, and now as you can see, we have the first prompt, which is insertion point. So okay, click. Then we have here the second prompt, which is a scale, which was this one. And we have a scale factor for all the axes. So I'll just type 1 for X, and then we need 1 for y as well. So you can just type 1 or simply press enter and it will use the same scale factor that we used for x. So I'll just press enter. Done. And then we have the third prompt, which is rotation. So you can specify the rotation angle. If you want it at any angle, you can just type it like 30 degrees now and enter, and we are done. The block is added. So if you want extra options, that's here. Now these options are also available on the right click menu. So you can go to insert, select a block, and before inserting you can right click, and then you get these options like you can select scale, you can rotate, you can change the scale along separate axes, and you can even explode it, which we'll see what it is. But first let's go to scale and let's change the scale to 2 and enter. And now we have 2 times larger block. Okay, we have already seen explode command when discussing modify tools, and explode will basically explode your polyline. But in this case, if you use explode for a block, it will convert it into simple geometry. Press enter, and now these are simple objects. It's no longer a block. We have all these other blocks, they're still here, but this particular object is converted into simple object. You can join it, but joining it won't convert it into a block again. And that's about blocks. Finally, our drawings are made. Let's learn about printing and plotting. For that, I'll close this blocks drawing without saving it, and I'll open the drawing which we have already seen. In this case, that drawing is inside this folder. We have practice drawing annotated. So let's open it. And here is the practice drawing which we made in the previous example. Let's print it. So for printing this, all we need to do is just go to this print option. You can also go to application, print and plot, or you can use Control P. Now this plot window will show up. Here you can start with plotter. In this case, we are not printing it on actual paper, so I'll select DWG to PDF because we want PDF output, but we have other options as well. If you want to select, you can select it from this list. If you have a printer installed, its drivers and everything, it will show up in this list. For example, in my case, we have a physical plotter which is installed here, and it's going to show up in this list. But I'll select DWG to PDF. Now the next step is paper size. I want to print this drawing on ISO A3 paper size. So let's just select it from this list. So we have ISO here, and in ISO or even in NC, we have 2 kinds of papers. We have full bleed paper, which are paper without margins, and then we have simple paper. For example, this one. We have in case of architectural and in case of NC, full bleed and normal paper. So I'll select ISO A3 normal. Now in ISO A3, we have 2 papers. One is vertical, or the portrait mode, another one is horizontal, or the landscape mode. So in this case, maybe let's just select ISO A3 landscape paper, which is this one. Now what to plot? Well, this is important. In this case, I want to plot a window, and I want to specify the area which will show up in my plot area. So I'll go to window, and now the entire window will disappear, and you can make a window. I'll click here, let go my mouse, and then click again, and that window is selected. And anything inside that window will show up in the plot. If you want to make that window again, you can click this box and you can just redefine that window like that. Now this option, center the plot, is important. In this case, I'll check this because as you can see in the preview, this hatch area is showing where your drawing will show up in the paper, which is on the left side. I want to incline it exactly at the center. So select that and it will automatically add the proper margins to ensure that it is at the center. For the scale, I'll select fit to paper. And then we have some options here, like if you want to plot your drawing in black and white, you can select grayscale or monochrome. Grayscale will keep the transparency, monochrome will ignore transparency, it will be truly black and white. Let me show you the difference. So grayscale, here select no if this prompt shows up, which is basically telling you that if you want to just make sure that these properties are set for layout as well. We are not discussing layout here. Once again, if you want to know everything about layouts and how to print your drawing using layout, that's discussed in our complete AutoCAD course, which is linked in the description of this video. So with that grayscale, click on preview, and here it is. So you can see that this transparency is more than the transparency of our drawing. Now, if you select monochrome, it's truly black and white like that, no transparency at all. All right, so with these settings, I'll just keep sure that monochrome is selected, but I'll also show you how colored drawing will look like. So I'll select acad.ctb, which is the colored one, go to preview, and that's how it's going to look like. I'll close it. And in this case, in case of colored drawing, you must have noticed that transparency was not visible, and that's because of this option. Plot transparency was unchecked. So just make sure this is checked. And now the transparency will be there. So I want complete monochrome drawing. There we are. And we don't want transparency, or if you want, you can keep it checked. And with all these settings, just click OK, desktop. I'll leave the same name and save it. And let's open it. So I'll close it, and here is our PDF with the transparency also here, and our entire drawing is plotted. So that's how you can print your drawing. So that was our complete AutoCAD tutorial series for beginners. As the next step, I'd highly recommend that you download the 2D and 3D practice drawing ebook that is linked here and also in the description of this video. Now, these practice drawings will help you get the required hands-on experience, which is really very necessary for you to kind of reinforce whatever you have learned here. And also, let me know what you want us to cover in the next video. I'll see you soon with another one. Take care.